countless viewers observed as Elizabeth Harper, composed and resolute, faced off against Chief Justice William Bennett during a congressional session that left the nation in awe. He stared directly at her and labeled someone as lacking qualifications. Later that day, he insisted his comment wasn't aimed at her, yet Elizabeth refused to let it pass. She unveiled the reality, cornering the nation's most influential judge, leaving him mute and defenseless against his own statements. Now, the public wonders, if she was deemed unfit, why was she the sole voice daring to reveal the truth? Stay tuned. This tale demands your full attention. Room 2175 in the Capitol Hill office building had never felt so oppressive. The stone walls stood as mute observers to what would become a historic clash in congressional records. Filled with journalists, academics, and onlookers, the chamber hummed with hushed expectation. At its heart sat Chief Justice William Bennett, his demeanor stately, his face inscrutable. To his side, with poised intensity, was Representative Elizabeth Harper, her dark blazer impeccably tailored, a delicate gold cross shining at her collar, clutching a hefty dossier. She bided her time, her gaze not on the lenses or her papers, but locked on the man whose rulings had molded the country's highest court. When her moment arrived, she stood deliberately, as if entering a battlefield. "Mr. Chief Justice," she started, her tone firm yet measured. "I contend that Americans have a right to know whether the Supreme Court serves the law or the hidden interests of its benefactors." A faint glint, perhaps a smirk's shadow, crossed Bennett's eyes, but he remained silent. Elizabeth proceeded, opening her file. "You've attended exclusive gatherings bankrolled by entities that later submitted briefs to your court. You've neglected to report gifts that would alarm any ordinary citizen. Yet, we're asked to believe your integrity needs no oversight." Each word deepened the room's stillness. When lesser courts adhere to ethical codes, but the highest court does not, that's not fairness. It's unchecked authority. Her voice stayed level, yet it bore the weight of countless unheard voices before that court. She delivered her final point like a judge's verdict. Shouldn't justice be impartial, not selectively silent? Bennett adjusted his microphone with care, pausing as if weighing his next words precisely. His hands rested neatly, a habit honed over years of judicial poise. When he spoke, it was neither rushed nor heated. His voice was precise, cool, and polished. "Congresswoman," he said, meeting her stare, "I question whether those without the necessary legal and constitutional expertise should critique the Supreme Court's ethics." His words lingered like embers after a spark. Then came the phrase that ignited the room. "Honestly, I doubt those unqualified should lecture the highest court on morality." The quiet wasn't fleeting. It dominated. It crept into every corner like mist, dense and unyielding, stifling every breath, blink, and thought. It was a silence that commanded focus without asking. No soul in room 2175 dared break it. Not aides, not the chair, not even the journalists, their fingers frozen above keyboards, too shocked to type. Bennett's words hung heavy, a smoldering fuse yet to ignite. Unqualified. A single term slicing the air like a velvet-draped dagger, sharp enough to sting, but ambiguous enough to evade blame. All eyes turned silently to Elizabeth Harper, the only black woman at the dais amid the tailored suits and patriotic pins. The room waited to see if she'd lash out, retreat, or vanish. But she did none of those. She remained utterly still, unshaken, unreadable. Her shoulders didn't tense. Her fists didn't clench. Instead, she lowered her gaze to her papers, the soft rustle of pages louder than any voice. She turned each sheet with deliberate ease, making the room acutely aware of their held breaths. She took her pen and jotted a note in the margin, as if no remark had been made. as if the nation's top judge hadn't just tried to silence her with a single, cutting sentence. Her composure was flawless, but her silence wasn't surrender. It was mastery. It was the mastery, born of enduring spaces, harsher, more deceitful than this one. 10 seconds ticked by. In the arena of live politics, 10 seconds of quiet feels eternal. Attendees shifted uncomfortably. The strain became palpable, almost alive. Even Chief Justice Bennett subtly tightened his grip, as if her silence's chill touched him. Then, with choreographed precision, she acted. Elizabeth set her pen beside her notepad. She raised her head, not hastily or theatrically, but with a strength that needed no proclamation. Her eyes met his, steady, fearless, calm. Her face showed not fury, but something icier, forged from years of being undervalued, doubted, and judged by ever-shifting standards. "Chief Justice," she said, her voice soft, yet piercing the quiet like a blade through fabric. "For the sake of precision, since precision matters in court, does it not?" She let the query linger, rhetorical, yet paused. "When you stated, 'I doubt those unqualified should lecture the highest court on morality,' I must ask you plainly." Her gaze didn't waver. "Were you speaking of me?" She paused briefly. "Because I see no one else here matching the target of your stare when you spoke." Then, a final line, gentle as a breeze but sharp as a gavel's crack. "So, I ask once more, Chief Justice, did you mean me?" Her question, delivered with chilling clarity, hung like a blade poised in silence. "Did you mean me?" Elizabeth Harper hadn't raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her calm was a weapon on display, visible yet untouched. Instead of rising to the occasion with candor or the practiced grace that had shielded him from political storms, Chief Justice William Bennett chose the easiest escape: evasion. He leaned forward slightly, hands clasped, his tone refined and intentionally vague. "My comment addressed a broad principle," he said, his voice sleek, almost overly polished, like stone masking decay. It wasn't aimed at any specific person. His words seemed tidy, but they were slick, crafted to dodge rather than answer. Yet the room had witnessed it. The timing, the direction of his gaze, the surgical precision of his verbal strike. Now he feigned it was abstract, theoretical, as if his words hadn't cut at the sole black woman present before the nation. Elizabeth sat still for a moment, then another. Then she leaned forward just enough, not to intimidate, but to speak with exactness, not force. "Chief Justice," she said, "I posed a question, and rather than answering, you hid behind vague generalities, expecting us to nod in agreement." Her voice held steady, her expression unreadable, but her words landed like granite. "That's not transparency. It's avoidance cloaked in judicial rhetoric." Bennett blinked once, then again. His fingers twitched on the table. The man who had faced presidents, who had shaped landmark rulings with words, now faced a woman half his age who wouldn't yield, who wouldn't be misled into silence. "In a courtroom," Elizabeth pressed on, her voice unwavering, "you'd insist on a clear answer. Yet here, before Congress, you sidestep with wordplay." Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but with a focus that cut deeper. "If I, a seated member of this body, can be singled out, deliberately or not, and when I seek clarity, the Chief Justice retreats to ambiguity, what message does that send to those without a platform?" The room's tension tightened, like a cable stretched between opposing forces. No one averted their gaze. No one breathed loudly. And Bennett faltered. His response came slower, stripped of its earlier assurance. "Congresswoman, I think you may have misread my intent," he started. But his words faltered, unconvincing even to himself. Elizabeth didn't cut him off. She didn't need to. The power had shifted. The dynamic had changed. For the first time, Bennett wasn't steering the room. He was justifying himself within it. The room sensed it too. The chairman didn't strike the gavel. Aides didn't whisper. The press stayed still. It wasn't protocol keeping them quiet. It was the weight of a moment that transcended Bennett's words or Elizabeth's question. It was about an outsider stepping into America's hallowed halls and refusing to be hushed. The storm was brewing, and everyone felt its approach. She had offered him every opportunity. She had asked with precision, waited through the quiet, endured the sidestep. But now Elizabeth Harper was through waiting. With a calm more potent than any shout, she reached for her tablet and activated it. The screen's glow lit her hands as rows of data appeared, neat lists of names, dates, and sums. Each entry a strand in a web few dared to unravel. Slowly, purposefully, she angled the tablet toward the committee. The room leaned closer. "Let's avoid vague circles," she said. "Let's examine the evidence." Her tone was steady, but it carried a new edge, like someone weary of begging to be heard. She scrolled the screen, her eyes never leaving Bennett. "The Liberty Foundation," she began. "You spoke at their Vail retreat on June 14th. 3 months later, they filed a brief in the Carter versus Apex case, which your court decided, and you sided with them. Care to explain who funded your travel and lodging? Their records show they paid for everything for distinguished judicial guests." She kept her voice even. She didn't need to raise it. Each word hit like a stone, measured and deliberate. "That decision reshaped environmental regulations nationwide. Now we learn the group that profited flew the Chief Justice to a private resort for closed-door talks." She tapped the screen again. Another record appeared. "Now, New Horizons," she said. "July 9th, D.C. Marriott, a private summit. You were the keynote. The guest list included CEOs from 5 tech firms, all with cases pending in federal court." She paused, letting the silence sting. "Is it unreasonable to question why a Supreme Court justice spends weekends privately with parties whose cases hinge on your rulings?" Her words were calm, her face impassive, but her quiet force was undeniable. "Answer this," she continued, her gaze fixed on him. "Who's truly unqualified here? The one exposing these facts, or the one repeatedly linked to billion-dollar interests, then voting in their favor?" Her tone was cool, her delivery sharp. "If questioning this makes me unfit, perhaps you're saying people like me shouldn't question at all." The next slide glowed. "Here's a flight log from October, a private jet, Peak View Holdings. They had a major commerce case your court declined to hear. Days before, you attended their event in Scottsdale. Coincidence?" She raised an eyebrow. "This isn't speculation, it's documented. Your name, their funds, your vote, a recurring pattern." Another pause. Her voice softened, cutting deeper. "So, if you believe I don't belong here, tell me. Does being qualified mean staying silent about this?" She lowered her tone to a near whisper, yet it resonated like a drum. "Because from my seat, qualification means daring to ask what others won't." She stopped speaking. She didn't need to continue. The truth had spoken for itself. The silence was hers now, not Bennett's. Elizabeth Harper hadn't shifted since she began reading. She didn't need to. Her words carried the weight. Across the polished table, Chief Justice William Bennett sat motionless, but something had changed beneath his surface. His hands gripped his chair's edge tightly, knuckles pale. His skin seemed stretched, like a man bracing against a tempest he couldn't tame. His judicial mask, calm, neutral, measured, was fracturing slowly. He didn't interrupt or object because Elizabeth wasn't accusing. She was revealing evidence. Each line she read stripped another layer from the myth around him. She didn't shout or slammed the table. There was no need for drama. She scrolled, paused, read. Her voice was gentle, almost soothing, but her words struck with a scalpel's precision and a hammer's force. June 14th, she resumed. Vail, Colorado. You addressed a Liberty Foundation retreat. They covered your travel, your stay, via a donor fund. 3 months later, they filed a brief in Carter versus Apex, and you voted their way. She flipped a page. July 9th, D.C. Marriott, New Horizons Summit. Tech leaders with court cases attended. You gave the keynote, and they paid your expenses. That's not a guess. It's documented. She glanced up briefly, ensuring he was listening. He was. His jaw was clenched, lips sealed tightly, as if holding back. There was nothing to hold. She continued. October 2nd, Scottsdale, Arizona. Peak View Holdings event. You flew on their jet. Tail number 5XKZ. 3 days later, your court declined Fletcher versus Commerce, impacting their business. You cast the deciding vote. Elizabeth paused, not from doubt, but to wield the silence she now owned. Then, softly, May 18th, Chicago, Civic Trust Dinner. They funded a brief for Trent versus Federal Commission, decided weeks later. Another 5-4 ruling. Your vote tipped it. She dimmed the screen, clasped her hands, and placed them gently on the table. No word was shouted, yet the room felt fragile, like glass on the verge of breaking. Bennett remained silent, his face paler, hands gripping harder, elbows heavy on his chair's arms. Elizabeth didn't smile. She wasn't performing or campaigning. She was delivering truth where it was hardest to speak. Her restraint outshone anger, her evidence trumped accusations, and she knew it. So, Chief Justice, she said at last, her voice clear, soft enough to draw the room in. When you said I wasn't fit to discuss ethics, was that about qualifications? She let the question linger, not for show, but because silence after truth speaks loudest. The quiet didn't waver. It settled, like ash after a blast, like a room holding its breath too long. For long moments no one stirred, not clerks, aides, or lawmakers at the dais. Eyes stayed fixed on the space between Elizabeth Harper and Chief Justice William Bennett, where something irrevocable had unfolded. He'd entered cloaked in tradition, bearing an institution rarely challenged. Now that cloak seemed threadbare, and the weight had shifted. Bennett wasn't posing questions. He was answering or avoiding them, and the room felt the shift like a fault line moving. Elizabeth hadn't raised her voice once. She didn't need to. She'd done what no gavel, robe, or rule could. She'd altered the room's gravity. What started as a dialogue between a justice and a congresswoman had become raw, perilous, a reckoning. When she spoke again, it wasn't loud or angry, but quiet, perhaps weary, rooted in a lifetime's forging. Her voice was low, steady, compelling listeners to lean in not just to hear, but to feel. If ethics, she said deliberately, are defined to exclude people like me, those who probe, who rise from places power doesn't touch, then that definition isn't worth defending. She let it rest, not for cheers, but to let truth take shape in silence. Her gaze held Bennett's. Her tone didn't soften, yet her next words felt less like confrontation, more like revelation. If demanding transparency makes me unfit, she said, each word precise, then we've lost sight of what qualification means. Her hand stayed still. She wasn't posing or performing. She was speaking truth no chamber or title could brace for. Perhaps being qualified isn't about fitting old rules. Perhaps it's about daring to challenge them, especially when they've never shielded people like me. No one dared break the moment. Chair creaks ceased. The chairman, stoic till now, looked down, nodded silently, not from lack of words, but because none were needed. The air thickened with shared understanding, not routine, not procedural, but real. A moment that redefined power's place in the room. No flashes, no applause, no news banners yet. But something fundamental had shifted, not just in the hearing, but in every witness to Elizabeth Harper's act. She didn't upend the system or torch it. She held it to account, showing what true qualification is. Her words landed, the balance tipped, and the silence gained new weight. Just as the room adjusted to this force, Chief Justice William Bennett moved slowly, as if sensing the tide's shift too late. He edged toward his microphone, his motions cautious, not confident, but damage control. His voice had lost its polished sheen, now brittle, uncertain. "Congresswoman Harper," he started, clearing his throat as if to erase the moment. "I admit my earlier comment could have been better worded. I meant no offense." A pause, then. "In truth, I referred to a staff advisor, not you." He spoke softly, hoping a gentle tone would lessen the impact. But no one relaxed, because this wasn't resolution, it was retreat. Elizabeth Harper saw through it. Her brow creased, not in shock. She'd seen this tactic before, power hiding in technicalities, hoping vagueness would mend what clarity exposed. She didn't rush to reply, letting his words fester. Then, with calm precision, she leaned forward, her tone so steady it held a sheathed blade's edge. "Chief Justice," she said, "your clarification only worsens it." Her words didn't erupt. They landed, soft, controlled, devastating. "If I wasn't your target, you knew I misread it. You saw me defend my character, my integrity, and you stayed silent." She paused, letting truth anchor. "You let the wound linger. You let the insult stand, uncorrected, before the nation. As I fought for my right to this seat, her hand stayed still. She needed no gestures. The room held its breath. Then came an unexpected moment that changed everything. An aide near the media screens quietly raised the volume on a live stream replay. It was silent, but the image was clear. Timestamp, angle, and Bennett, leaning forward, delivering his statement, eyes fixed on Elizabeth Harper, deliberate, not casual. The truth lay not in his words, but in their target. No audio was needed. The footage spoke. Elizabeth didn't react. She didn't need to. Her silence wasn't defeat. It was validation. The silence you offer when evidence outshouts you. The silence that needs no final argument, because facts have landed. Slowly, she faced Bennett, and for the first time, his composure cracked. Shoulders tight, eyes dropping to the table. His lips pressed, but no words came. What apology could withstand that? Then Elizabeth spoke, softly, carrying the moment's full weight. "You saw your words strike me," she said, "and you let me bear that alone." Her voice was gentle, each word a stone in still water. "Now you claim it wasn't me. You didn't misspeak. You let the falsehood grow and me bleed." She didn't shout or accuse beyond what all saw. She named the silence, the moment, the failure. The room didn't gasp. It stilled, as if watching someone refuse erasure. Then came true silence, not a pause, not a prelude, but the silence after something shatters. A silence no apology could mend, no clarification could undo. A silence that reshapes how power is seen, having watched it falter, stammer, fail to rewrite itself. Elizabeth Harper didn't revel or push further. She glanced at her notes, tapped her tablet, and closed the file. Her task was complete. She hadn't come to perform, but to demand accountability. And all, on the dais, in the gallery, behind cameras, knew what transpired. The nation's top judge had spoken, but her silence resounded. The silence post-replay wasn't just condemning, It was absolute. The illusion broke. The footage spoke. That morning, William Bennett no longer seemed in command. He looked like a man whose mask had fallen, unsure how to reclaim it. Elizabeth Harper, across from him, didn't twist the blade. Instead, she turned inward, her face shifting, not to victory, but to memory. Her posture stiffened, eyes dipped briefly. Then she looked up, past him, past cameras, past mahogany, into something ancient, unyielding. She spoke, not to seize the moment, but to share her origin's truth. "There's something you need to understand," she began, her voice quieter, heavy with meaning. "At 19, I faced my first arrest." The room froze, no whispers, no rustles. I wasn't drunk, stealing, or chaotic. I stood outside a Boston courthouse, protesting a black teen's 25-year sentence for stealing a jacket. A jacket. A white boy from a private school got probation for assault. I held a sign, chanted his name. That was enough. Her eyes didn't waver, her jaw steady, calm like a storm's eye. They called me a trespasser, disruptive, cuffed me, shoved me into a cruiser like a threat. My mom couldn't afford a lawyer. We had no system allies, just our name, worth little. She exhaled slowly. Charges dropped, but the record lingered years, haunting every internship, job interview, before my GPA, my rank, me. The tension shifted, not between her and Bennett, but between her past and their view. That changed me, not to anger, but resolve. I didn't enter law school to join the system that bound me. I went to dismantle it, rebuild it for those voiceless in rooms like this. Her voice grew deliberate. I studied to grasp the law's flaws, where bias lurks, where silence shields power and buries the weak. She leaned closer, not for effect, but because her words demanded nearness. People like me are deemed lacking from the start, too loud, too emotional, too angry, too black, always unqualified. I know what it means when power glances at a woman like me and says those words. I've heard them since childhood. She faced Bennett again, fully. I've spent a lifetime told I don't belong. Yet today, I hold this microphone, while the man who doubted my place hides in his robe. Her words didn't burst. They rested, heavy, like stones on marble. Bennett's face was blank, no longer cold, but hollow. He didn't blink or scowl. His softened expression hinted at resignation, unable to meet the moment. Elizabeth didn't gloat or press. She let her words settle, weighty as long-delayed justice. Her eyes returned to her notes, not reading, her hand hovering, still in that courthouse memory, still 19, cuffed. But she was here now. Every struggle, arrest, doubt, barred rooms, led here. "I didn't come for comfort today," she said softly. "I came for truth." Nothing in that room could challenge it. The room still reeled from her story's weight. Each word about her arrest for protesting, her fight to reshape the law, settling like unyielding dust. Chief Justice Bennett didn't respond. He couldn't. His silence, once commanding, now exposed him. His once armored power faded, leaving a man who'd ruled rooms, now still, trapped in what he didn't say, what he allowed. Elizabeth didn't look victorious. She looked done, not weary, but whole. She needed nothing more from him. No apology, no gesture, no correction. Her truth was said. She didn't touch her notes or shuffle papers, avoiding any act to blunt her final edge. Instead, she sat taller, not abruptly, but with a resolve older than the institution. Her hands rested once more. Then she stood, graceful, intentional, not ending a hearing, but emerging from a fire she'd crossed alone. Her movement rippled through the room, a pressure shift, making all aware of their silence, their role. Everyone knew they saw something unforgettable, irreversible. Elizabeth didn't glance at Bennett or wait for his gaze. She spoke clearly, Not to him, not the committee, but to history. Elizabeth didn't glance at Bennett or wait for his gaze. She spoke clearly. Not to him, not the committee, but to history. Her voice was steady, final. Qualification, she said, isn't granted by titles. It's earned through choices, even alone. No quiver, no pause, just raw truth from one who lived it. She wasn't seeking permission. She claimed space. Space her ancestors were denied, which she now owned unapologetically. Her words didn't resound. They carved into the silence, the walls, every mind present. She didn't check if Bennett grasped it. His understanding was irrelevant. The moment had surpassed him. The nation saw, and Elizabeth Harper had moved beyond, not with spite, but with clarity, having spoken truth in a place built to hide it, standing while others sat. The ensuing silence wasn't hollow. It brimmed with unspoken truth. No murmurs, no motion. No one shifted or grabbed a pen. Even the chairman, with gavel power, stayed mute, unblinking. The hearing room, used to clamor, debates, staged power, was now still, reverently so. Not from courtesy, but awe. They knew what happened. The one questioned, dismissed, underestimated, stood, literally. While the nation's judicial titan sat frozen, shoulders sagging, eyes on a table no longer his shield. Elizabeth needed no cheers, headlines, or sound bites. She'd given herself what mattered. Truth. That truth towered over the dais, outspoke the gavel, outlasted robes. She walked slowly, not stiffly, but with closure's confidence. Her heels tapped softly on marble, each step a clear mark, needing no translation, saying, "These walls don't scare me. I owe them nothing, and my worth needs no validation." Behind, Bennett sat, face blank, hands clasped tighter. Dignity didn't hold him there. It was burden. The burden of late silence, a robe no longer protective, the weight of being seen, not as law's guardian, but a man who could have stood and didn't. He didn't rise or speak, and most tellingly, didn't deny what occurred. How could he? The nation saw it live, raw. Outside, buzz began, hallway whispers, texts flaring, journalists stunned. But in room 2175, that noise hadn't reached. Only a woman's fading footsteps sounded, and a nation's awakening grew louder. She didn't look back. Those sure of their ground never do. Bennett stayed seated, but all knew who stood. The door shut softly, yet its echo roared. Inside room 2175, stillness lingered, near sacred. Outside, the world stirred. Elizabeth kept walking, not for cameras, whispers, or the security detail flanking her. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the Capitol Hill office building's marble corridor, louder than they should have been, as if the structure listened. Her eyes stayed forward, face calm, but a storm of notice trailed her. As she rounded the main hallway, it struck. Not press, not chaos, but quiet. A crowd formed. No shouts, no flashes, just staffers, reporters, passers-by parting, not ordered, but instinctively, sensing history. A phone live-streamed, its screen flashing briefly. She stood. A journalist murmured to a producer, "Never seen a hearing close like that." No one addressed Elizabeth directly yet, as if her radiating power still lingered, like heat from embers. Outside, the story erupted. Social media shared her final statement's clip at breakneck speed. Her rise, her calm, her closing words. Qualification isn't granted by titles. It's earned through choices, even alone. Subtitled in dozens of languages. Her standing, Bennett frozen, became a symbol. A split-screen post, her rising, him sinking, captioned, "Truth wears no robes." At Georgetown, a freshman law student, Sarah, paused, studying to watch. She didn't blink. When it ended, she whispered, "That's why I'm here." In a Seattle factory break room, a 58-year-old machinist, new to Elizabeth Harper, leaned to the TV, muttering, "That woman's got iron in her." In a New York newsroom, producers shouted, "Clear 6:30, this leads." In Portland cafes, Philadelphia courts, Atlanta kitchens, people watched, shared, not just clips, but stories. Saw a black woman dismantle the top judge with truth. I'm in tears. Was told I wasn't qualified for my roots. Today, I saw proof otherwise. My daughter asked what qualified means. Showed her Elizabeth's clip. She smiled first time this week. By the Capitol Rotunda, Elizabeth's phone buzzed 31 times. She didn't glance. Inside, staffers packed up, slower, as if handling something hallowed, not routine. A junior staffer, fresh from grad school, clutched his folder, staring at Bennett, not angrily, but in awe at Elizabeth's lingering silence, saying, "Everything's different now." Bennett didn't move post-Elizabeth. He sat, hands clasped, eyes vacant. His once invincible power cracked, not by force, but truth, too calm to dismiss, too still to refute. It spread. CNN interrupted. Breaking. Congressional hearing sparks a defining political moment. MSNBC. Elizabeth Harper's clash with Chief Justice Bennett wasn't just politics. It was history. Fox News hedged. Tense Supreme Court Congresswoman exchange stirs debate. But they couldn't dodge the image. A woman standing, a man silent. By night, Harper versus Bennett topped global trends. It wasn't a hearing. It was a turning point. In her office, Elizabeth sat. The clamor reached the walls, not her core. Her chief of staff set a laptop with cued footage. Elizabeth didn't play it. She knew the moment. She gazed out, Washington's sky turning soft orange, dusk settling like a breath. She exhaled. Long, deep, quiet. Not victorious, but true. That sufficed. Nationwide, it wasn't words recalled first, but stillness. Her stance, her unspoken demand for respect without shouting. That stillness replayed in schools, homes, campuses, union halls. People didn't just watch. They joined the wave. In Detroit, activists printed posters. "She stood, so we will." In Tulsa, a pastor retitled his sermon, "Standing as the Answer." In Sacramento, an 11-year-old girl began her school talk with Elizabeth's qualification quote. Her teacher wept. Elizabeth didn't aim for a movement. Most aren't planned. They spark when someone won't sit. This wasn't a moment. It was a tide just starting. They called it the robe-breaking moment, not in briefs or reports, but in homes, lecture halls, barbershops, courthouses, newsrooms, like survivors recalling a sky-splitting storm. As Elizabeth Harper's clip hit 100 million views, America didn't just admire, it split. Backlash hit fast, not as expected. Not her, but him. Within a day, the Supreme Court's office issued a brief statement. Chief Justice Bennett recognizes the April 22nd hearing's misunderstanding. He respects all Congress members and regrets any confusion. It fell flat. No apology, just sterile distance. The internet pounced. "Regrets confusion," a headline scoffed. He wasn't confused. He was exposed. What followed wasn't a PR slip. It was unraveling. Law schools ditched planned lectures to dissect the hearing frame by frame. Students read Elizabeth's words aloud. Not testimony, but manifesto. A Georgetown student's viral TikTok said, "Ethics were taught as sacred." Elizabeth showed what happens when power's held to its own rules. The legal blogosphere exploded. SCOTUS Watch ran an editorial, "Robes aren't shields, never should be." A Yale ethics professor's thread hit 10 million views. Bennett's failure to speak, own, see isn't error, it's a mirror. America saw its reflection. The American Bar Association, typically reserved, noted, Recent events underscored the need for a binding ethics code for all justices. Congress acted. Representative Thomas Caldwell, an Illinois moderate Democrat, called for an inquiry into Bennett's ties to groups Elizabeth cited. 3 Republicans, pressed by voters, joined, turning symbolism into momentum. Cable news divided ideologically, but even conservative anchors struggled. Fox's legal analyst admitted, even if Bennett didn't mean Harper, not correcting live was fatal. He didn't just seem arrogant, he seemed scared. MSNBC sharpened it. She stood. He sat. History will note that. Not all cheered. Online fringes attacked Elizabeth. Disrespectful, showboating, ungrateful, or the old tropes, too emotional, aggressive, loud. Edited clips tried painting her as combative, unprofessional. But they flopped. The truth had 100 million witnesses. The real backlash hit the Supreme Court. For decades, it lacked a formal ethics code. Justices disclosed little. Meetings, honorariums, trips, relying on discretion. Elizabeth's questions turned discretion into exposure. Her tablet held not just data, but precedent. The nation demanded answers. A watchdog group filed a Freedom of Information Act request for all justices' travel records. The Washington Post launched Justice and Influence, probing private retreats and summits. Senator Emily Grayson, a judiciary-linked moderate, unveiled the Judicial Integrity and Transparency Act, mandatory disclosures, gift bans, an ethics board. On the Hill, it was dubbed the Harper Clause. Grayson said, Congresswoman Harper didn't just highlight a moment, she revealed a pattern. This is accountability, not revenge. Bennett stayed quiet. No statements, testimony, or interviews. Silence no longer shielded. Not after the nation saw him face truth, stay mute, then deny targeting her. The damage wasn't just personal, it shook the institution. Gallup reported Supreme Court confidence at a historic 41% low. Young lawyers cited Harper's hearing as a case study, not commentary. Professors rewrote ethics curricula. Podcasts debated deference versus duty. She stood, he sat became a benchmark, not a recap. 2 weeks later, Elizabeth joined a late-night interview. Not a panel, just her, a chair, a mic. The host asked softly, "Any regrets that day?" She replied instantly, "None. I'd have carried that silence forever if I didn't stand, and I'm done bearing what isn't mine." The audience didn't cheer. They absorbed it, as the nation did when she stood. Somewhere, someone once called unqualified, watched, and realized they weren't. They were starting. Months later, Elizabeth Harper's single sentence had tilted power's axis. The world didn't pause, it redirected. The Judicial Integrity and Transparency Act, once too bold, passed the House bipartisanly and the Senate 52-48. Supreme Court justices faced binding ethics rules, a U.S. first. The oversight body was named the Harper Commission on Judicial Accountability. Elizabeth didn't seek this. She didn't draft or campaign for it. But she'd earned it. Her stand grew beyond media or hashtags. It became curriculum. From Harvard to Georgetown, law students studied the hearing's legal and moral framework. A Stanford professor opened her lecture with Elizabeth's line, "Qualification isn't granted by titles. It's earned through choices, even alone." She paused, saying, "This is integrity. This is resisting institutional stagnation. This is why we are here." Courtrooms nationwide saw young lawyers cite the Harper precedent. Not a case, but a stand. Elizabeth became a symbol, yet refused ornamentation. She showed up quietly, not for fame, but people. She returned to her arrest site university, hosting a seminar for students of color in pre-law. The law won't embrace you, but you belong in it. She declined awards, endorsements, but accepted a Flint, Michigan legal aid group's invite. Asked why, she said, "Justice begins here." Not courts, but where people are heard before they can pay to be. Bennett never recovered fully. He served, but his public presence shrank. Each ruling he wrote was tainted by his silence, the day he failed to speak when it counted. Still Chief Justice, his title's weight had faded, measured, and found wanting in that room. Elizabeth's role transcended Congresswoman. She became a beacon of principled leadership in cynical times. At a Philadelphia town hall, a student asked, "Are you ever scared?" She smiled gently. "Daily. Courage isn't fear's absence. It's not letting fear speak." The room roared. She waited, then added, "Each truth you voice, even trembling, paves the way for the next." Her words adorned posters, speeches, tattoos, murals in overlooked neighborhoods. On the hearing's anniversary, a Brooklyn artist unveiled Elizabeth standing tall, titled Unrobed. Its plaque read, "She didn't just stand, she made standing truth." Elizabeth didn't claim the moment. She credited those before her, silenced, crushed by systems they didn't build, but bore. On radio, she said, "I stood because others couldn't." I'm the echo of voices ignored too soon. Her legacy lasted, not for upending the system instantly, but for reminding people they could demand better. She didn't just speak truth, she lived it, leaving a path, not of approval or robes, but a woman's steps who stood and never looked back. As halls cleared and headlines grew, something outlasted laws, deeper than power. A question no camera caught, no transcript fully held. What is true worth? Who decides? In a world prizing compliance, Elizabeth Harper dared refuse silence, not in protest, but truth. Cold, inescapable. She didn't demand respect with shouts or poses. She was respect. She exposed a fault line in every institution, courtroom, boardroom, classroom. The myth that titles prove integrity, robes righteousness, power deference. Elizabeth proved none hold without accountability, which comes when someone dares ask, "Who granted your power? Why haven't you earned it?" This wasn't just a hearing or courtroom. It was every woman told she doesn't belong for her voice, skin, or questions. Every person overlooked, dismissed, gaslit for naming it. Elizabeth stood, not for spotlight, but knowing what it's like alone. That's the story's heart. When no one protects or lifts you, standing is rebellion. Justice, true justice, isn't born in marble or behind doors. It's demanded aloud, before those who silence dissent. It comes when someone rejects the system's silence. Elizabeth Harper didn't just face the Chief Justice. She disrupted a centuries-old act where power feigns neutrality while others comply. She broke that script, showing justice dies where courage is penalized and silence rewarded. The sharpest lesson isn't her words, but his silence. William Bennett, with supreme judicial power, had every chance to clarify, correct, defend another's dignity, intended or not. He didn't. That revealed the worst injustice, one hiding in courtesy, denying with smiles, evading with vague words to avoid blame. Elizabeth called that cowardice what it was, exposing a threat beyond corruption, apathy and power, democracy's foe. This is a woman arrested at 19 for protesting, who decades later faced America's top judge unflinching. Not with rage, but memory. Every slight, shut door, doubt carried into that room, turned testimony. Not for her, but every girl told to smile, every first-gen student deemed unfit, every black woman called too much, then too little. Elizabeth spoke for them, and the world heard. The story's moral isn't power's evil. It's that unexamined power risks harm. Tradition without truth lies. Ethics aren't self-given. They're proven. Dignity doesn't stem from robes, gavels, or seats, but from standing right, alone if needed. Sometimes robes don't signal wisdom, they shield from it. Sometimes the least protected leave with the most truth. Next time you're called unqualified, recall this. Her questions silence, power's tremor when faced. Recall the woman who stood, not invited, but earned through fire. The world shifts not when power permits, but when the brave demand. Qualification isn't pedigree or power's proximity. It's what you do when lights blaze and silence deepens. What you say when none will, whether your truth makes the world juster or unmoved. Elizabeth Harper shook the world, not with fury or show, but truth. In that, we found rarity, not just accountability, but courage's blueprint. Thanks for watching and standing with us for justice. Your support matters. Like, subscribe, notify to stay updated. Share your thoughts below. What stirred you most? Together, our voices shape change.